Hey guys, tonight we begin a tale whispered by desert winds and dreamed under Andalusian skies. Imagine this. A warm evening breeze curls through your window, carrying scents of sheep's wool, olive groves, and the ancient hush of fate. You're resting beneath a fig tree, a worn leather satchel under your head, the stars above whispering secrets. This is where we find Santiago, a shepherd boy with a simple life, and one recurring dream that refuses to leave him alone. This is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, a book so deceptively simple, you might think it's just a fable. But listen closely and you'll realize it's a mirror, a map, a whisper that says, what you seek has been seeking you. And then, just when you think you've grasped its meaning, it slips through your fingers and asks again, do you really know who you are? You probably won't survive this. Okay, maybe physically you will, but your safe assumptions about life, about destiny, about what's possible, those are toast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. You know, I love seeing those little windows into your world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Santiago is a young shepherd in the sun-washed hills of Andalusia, southern Spain. His life is rhythmic, simple. He reads, he travels with his sheep, he listens to the wind. But he also dreams. Night after night, the same image returns to him. A child tells him to find treasure buried near the Egyptian pyramids. Most of us would laugh it off. But Santiago, he's not most people. He begins to question the life he's living. Is tending sheep enough? Is comfort worth more than possibility? The yearning builds. It's not just about the treasure, though gold is nice. It's about something deeper. A whisper from the universe that he's meant for more. And that whisper is persistent. In a town square, Santiago meets a gypsy woman who interprets dreams. She tells him to go to Egypt. Of course, she wants to share the treasure if he finds it. Naturally, Santiago thinks it's a scam, and he's almost ready to drop the whole idea. But fate has plans. Enter Melchizedek, an old man with piercing eyes and a knowing smile. He says he's the king of Salem. Yep, like a biblical character who wandered into a modern parable. He tells Santiago about personal legends, what you're truly meant to do in life. Everyone has one, but most people give up before they begin. The king offers 2 stones, Urim and Thummim, for guidance, and tells Santiago that when you want something deeply, the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. It's both profound and maddeningly vague, just like most spiritual truths. But Santiago listens. Maybe it's the glint in the man's eye. Maybe it's the fact that he's beginning to feel claustrophobic in his comfortable life. Or maybe, just maybe, the treasure is real. Not just metaphorically, but really real. So he sells his sheep. Every single one. Goodbye, familiar routine. Goodbye, safe pastures. Goodbye, the known. It doesn't take long before he's robbed. Everything gone, money, dreams, hope. He sits in the marketplace, realizing just how unmagical the world can be when you don't understand its language. He trusted the wrong person. He feels like a fool. But here's where Qualo does something magical. The loss doesn't end Santiago's journey. It begins it. Because the story isn't about lucky breaks. It's about transformation. You think you're chasing gold, but actually you're being melted down, purified, reshaped. Santiago could turn back, but instead he adapts. He lifts his eyes from despair and begins again. That's where we leave him tonight, broke, humbled, and about to learn that life, like alchemy, begins when everything else is stripped away. Santiago's journey through loss is, in many ways, more important than his journey toward the treasure, because here at rock bottom, he begins to see clearly. And that clarity brings him to a little crystal shop perched on a Tangier hillside. Its windows smudged, its shelves dusty, its owner weary. A place not unlike Santiago himself. Overlooked, a little broken, waiting for renewal. Santiago doesn't beg. He asks for work. The crystal merchant, hesitant but curious, agrees. And so the shepherd becomes a cleaner of glass, polishing each surface until the light reflects like desert sun on water. It's mundane work, repetitive, but it's also healing. Each day spent polishing becomes an act of devotion, and Santiago starts learning the unspoken rules of this new world. He introduces small changes, displaying goods on the street, serving tea in crystal glasses. The merchant is skeptical, cautious. He's been sitting in the comfort of his fear for decades, dreaming of a pilgrimage to Mecca, but never daring to go. Santiago's presence unsettles him. It's like watching youth make choices you never had the courage for. But the changes work. The shop begins to thrive. Customers come. The merchant earns more in months than he had in years. And Santiago, he earns back his fortune. The money he lost is returned. But more than that, he gains confidence, strategy, and something unteachable, resilience. Still, the desert calls. And this is where many of us pause. After failure and recovery, wouldn't you just settle down again? Buy new sheep, find a wife, stay safe? But not Santiago. He understands now that security is often a disguise for stagnation. He hasn't forgotten his dream. He's simply become stronger, more awake. He joins a caravan bound for Egypt. It's a symbolic step. He's now surrounded by strangers again, moving across a landscape that feels both infinite and intimate. The desert isn't just sand, it's a mirror. It reflects what you carry. For some, that's fear. For Santiago, it's a question. Am I really ready to face who I'm meant to be? Along the way, he meets the Englishman. This man is obsessed with alchemy. He lugs around books about the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, and the process of purification through fire. To him, alchemy is science. To Santiago, it sounds like destiny wrapped in mystery. The Englishman introduces Santiago to the idea that transformation isn't just metaphorical, it's universal. Everything is in the process of becoming something else. And those who master that process can do miraculous things. Santiago tries to read the books, but finds them baffling. Instead, he learns through observation of the desert, of people, of omens. He listens to the wind, the silence, the movements of camels. He's absorbing knowledge without even realizing it, because real wisdom doesn't always come from pages. It comes from presence. Eventually, the caravan reaches the oasis of Alfam. And here, in this lush reprieve from the sands, Santiago meets Fatima. The moment is simple and electric. One look and he knows. She is the love written into his story, not as a detour, but as part of his legend. Their love grows in stillness. They meet by the well, in stolen glances and quiet promises. Santiago wants to stay, to build a life with her. But Fatima, strong, wise, and deeply loving, tells him to go, to follow his dream. "I'm a woman of the desert," she says. "I will wait for you." It's a love that doesn't clutch or demand. It trusts. Santiago learns here that true love does not impede your path. It strengthens it. He also learns that every stage of the journey holds its own kind of treasure. Fatima becomes a compass pointing both inward and forward. But the oasis holds other secrets. War is brewing in the tribal lands beyond, and Santiago begins to see omens, signs in the flight of hawks and the shifting winds. He warns the chieftains, risking ridicule. But his instincts prove right, and he's rewarded with respect, and something more, the arrival of the alchemist. The alchemist is not what Santiago expects. He's not mystical or grandiose. He's calm, severe, eyes sharp like flint. He sees through Santiago at once. And instead of offering shortcuts or spells, he offers questions. The alchemist doesn't promise an easy path. In fact, he tells Santiago that to reach the pyramids, he will face real danger. Fear, after all, is the only true barrier. Most give up when they're closest to their dream. But those who continue, even when the path vanishes, those are the real alchemists of their own lives. Together, they leave the oasis. The desert stretches ahead, wide as doubt, silent as fate. As the winds sweep across the golden dunes, Santiago and the alchemist press deeper into the desert. Their destination, the pyramids of Egypt, shimmering on the edge of the known world like a mirage of destiny. But more than that, Santiago's journey now curves inward, towards silence, towards symbols, towards something only the heart understands. The desert tests them in silence. It stretches endlessly, whispering fear into the mind. But the alchemist remains unshaken. He teaches Santiago that the desert speaks. Listen to your heart, he says. It knows all things. This is no romantic metaphor. In Coelho's world, the heart is an oracle, if only you can hear past its fears. Santiago begins to understand. Fear doesn't tell the truth. It only tells a story about what might go wrong. But your heart, when truly listened to, knows the real path. The challenge is learning the difference. The alchemist becomes a kind of spiritual surgeon, cutting away Santiago's illusions with quiet, razor-sharp truths. One night, the alchemist demonstrates true mastery. In the heart of tribal territory, they're captured by armed men. Death feels inevitable, but the alchemist offers a deal. Santiago, he claims, is a powerful alchemist who can turn himself into the wind. The men laugh, but Santiago is not laughing. He has 3 days. He panics. He begs the desert, the wind, the sun. He asks, "How do I become the wind?" And slowly, his panic gives way to surrender. He begins to connect, first with the sand, then with the wind, then with the sun. He speaks their language, not through words, but through intention. What happens next is both literal and metaphoric. Santiago becomes the wind, or rather, he dissolves into it. The tribal men are awed. The alchemist simply nods, because transformation isn't about spectacle. It's about inner alchemy, about dissolving the self to become something larger. As they journey on, the alchemist gives Santiago one last lesson. He brings him to a monastery and demonstrates the true philosopher's stone. He really can turn lead into gold. But then, he leaves Santiago to continue alone. The last steps must always be taken solo. The alchemist knows he's only a guide. Santiago must become the seer of his own story. Santiago walks the final stretch to the pyramids, heart pounding, eyes wide. The moment is cinematic. Moonlight spilling over ancient stones, wind lifting his cloak. He digs. The earth is hard. His fingers bleed. But he digs, because belief, once true, is stronger than any doubt. And then he's attacked, beaten by strangers, left bruised and near broken. They laugh when he explains the dream that led him there. One of them says, "Funny, I had a dream too, about a treasure buried under a sycamore tree in Spain. But only an idiot would go chasing dreams." And just like that, Santiago understands. The treasure is not in Egypt. It never was. It's under the tree where his journey began, where he first slept, dreaming of more. The pyramids were not the reward. They were the mirror. The journey wasn't about distance, it was about depth. Santiago traveled the world to discover that what he truly needed was already close. But he had to become someone new to see it. So he returns to Spain. The fields look the same. The sycamore tree still stretches toward the sky. But Santiago is different. He's no longer the boy who once counted sheep and chased illusions. He's the man who's listened to omens, loved deeply, become the wind, and returned. He digs again, and this time he finds a treasure. Gold, jewels, tangible reward. Yes, but also something more radiant. The proof that dreams are real, that the world does conspire when you listen to your heart, that each of us carries a map not to a place, but to the self we are meant to become. The story could end there, but Qualo lingers in meaning. This is not just a tale of buried gold. It's a parable about life itself. The desert, the alchemist, Fatima, the crystal merchant, each are pieces of Santiago's becoming, lessons carved in wind and time. So let's pause and reflect. The idea of the personal legend. This is Coelho's masterstroke. It's the calling etched into your soul before birth. Most people ignore it, or forget it, or drown it in fear, responsibility, practicality. But waits, and when you begin to listen, even faintly, the entire world leans toward you. Not without difficulty, but with synchronicity. That's the secret truth of the story. The alchemist, as a character, is less a person and more an archetype. He represents the ultimate spiritual mentor, not one who gives answers, but one who removes your need for them. He helps you see that truth isn't taught. It's remembered. Fatima, too, is not just a love interest. She is love distilled. She teaches us that the right person will never hold you back. True love expands your journey. It doesn't interrupt it. Even the crystal merchant is essential. He's the version of ourselves that never tries, that lets life shrink us into comfort and quiet despair. Through him, we glimpse what happens when you betray your own legend. You survive, but you don't really live. The desert is more than setting. It's a character. It reveals, strips away, purifies. It teaches that survival and surrender are not opposites. That sometimes, to move forward, you must become still. Coelho's prose is deceptively simple, but that's its brilliance. He's not writing to impress academics. He's writing to awaken your soul. Every sentence is a breadcrumb leading you back to yourself. His story structure mimics spiritual transformation, departure, initiation, return. And the treasure? It's the quiet knowing that you are enough, that the universe is listening, that life, if met with courage, will reveal more than you ever imagined. So, Santiago returns, dusty, weathered, but with eyes that now see differently. He kneels beneath the familiar sycamore tree in the dilapidated church where his journey began. There, beneath its ancient roots, the treasure awaits. He uncovers the box of gold and jewels, gleaming in the soft Spanish light, as though the earth itself had been saving it just for him. But here's where we must truly listen. The treasure is not the point. It never was. Koala could have hidden nothing beneath that tree, and the story would still shine. The real gold lies in what Santiago has become. The boy has transformed into a man who now walks with purpose, listens to omens, honors silence, and knows how to surrender. That's the real philosopher's stone, not alchemy of matter, but of spirit. Now, let's slow things down and sit with the weight of what Qualo is offering. The Alchemist is deceptively simple on the surface, a fable, a parable, a hero's journey. But embedded within its slender pages are the echoing truths of centuries of mystics, philosophers, and seekers. Let's start with the notion of the personal legend. It's Coelho's term for what others might call your calling, your dharma, or your soul's blueprint. This idea that each of us is born with a unique path, and that our greatest task in life is to uncover and fulfill it, not just for glory or success, but because in doing so, we align ourselves with the universe itself. It's a radical idea when you think about it, that the universe has a plan for you, and more, if you truly commit to following it, then the world, as Qualo writes, will conspire in your favor. It's an idea rooted in mysticism and metaphysics, but also echoed in psychology, theology, and philosophy. But here's the rub. Most people never pursue their personal legend. Why? Fear, responsibility, security. Santiago meets them all in human form. the baker who chose stability over adventure, the crystal merchant who longs for Mecca but never leaves, the Englishman buried in books but too hesitant to seek truth directly. Each character is a mirror showing Santiago and us the cost of settling. There's something deeply human about this, because we've all felt it, that flutter in our chest when a dream whispers to us. That moment of stillness when the world feels like it could open if only we took the risk. But also that gnawing fear that freezes us in place. What if we're wrong? What if we fail? What if the treasure isn't real? Coelho's genius lies in gently dismantling those doubts through storytelling. He doesn't argue. He shows. Over and over, he demonstrates that while the path may be uncertain, the longing for it is not. The heart always knows, but speaks softly. You must learn to listen. The language of omens is another key theme. In a modern world obsessed with logic and reason, Coelho dares to remind us of intuition, of signs, of the poetry of life. The flight of hawks, the shimmer of a coin, a sudden gust of wind. None are random in The Alchemist. Everything means something if you're awake enough to see. There's a deep call to re-enchant the world here, to see life not as a machine, but as a living, breathing story, one in which you are not just a reader, but a co-creator. This isn't fantasy. It's a return to an ancient way of knowing, one that honors both mystery and meaning. Let's talk about the desert, too. The setting isn't accidental. The desert is one of the oldest spiritual landscapes in human consciousness. Think of the prophets, sages, monks. They all go into the desert. Why? Because it strips away distraction. It humbles. It tests. And eventually it reveals. In The Alchemist, the desert is both a crucible and a teacher. You don't survive it without transformation. Then there's Fatima. Her role is subtle but profound. She loves Santiago, but lets him go. She knows that real love never demands that you abandon your truth. Instead, it waits. It supports. It trusts. In this way, she becomes the embodiment of divine feminine wisdom. Receptive, radiant, unwavering. She teaches us that true love and true purpose never compete. They coexist. And of course, we cannot forget the alchemist himself. He's the archetypal mentor, the Gandalf, the Yoda, the quiet figure who knows when to speak and when to vanish. His power isn't just his ability to turn lead into gold. It's that he sees Santiago clearly. He sees what the boy can become and holds that vision until Santiago can hold it for himself. There's something almost mystical about how the alchemist distills such vast, ancient truths into a story so readable you could breeze through it in a day. And yet, if you let it, the book continues to work on you long after the final page. Because the questions it asks are not easily answered. What is your personal legend? What omens are you ignoring? Where is your desert? What treasure have you buried beneath routine and fear? The style itself reflects the book's spiritual undertone. Coelho's prose is spare, lyrical, full of white space. It doesn't rush. It pauses. It listens. In this way, reading The Alchemist feels like meditation, or prayer, or maybe a dream. It's easy to dismiss such simplicity, especially in a world that prizes complexity. But perhaps that's the point. The truest things are often the simplest. And the simplest things, when truly understood, are the most profound. The Alchemist reminds us that life is not random, that love matters, that the universe is not indifferent but intimate, that the journey, however winding, is always worth it. So, as Santiago finally uncovers his treasure beneath that Spanish sycamore tree, we feel the resonance in our own hearts. We remember our own forgotten dreams. We sense the alchemist within us, waiting, patient, unmoving, holding the gold we always carried. Because ultimately, the story isn't just about Santiago. It's about you. Now that Santiago has unearthed his treasure, let's sit with that image a little longer. The worn leather pouch in his hands, trembling slightly. The weight of gold and stones not just against his skin, but against all he's been through. It's a quiet, sacred moment. The end of one story and the beginning of another. Because now we move from summary to reflection, from what happened to what it means. See, The Alchemist isn't really about a boy finding treasure. It's about a soul finding itself. And that, friends, is the heartbeat of level 2, stepping into the self. This playlist, this layer of consciousness we explore tonight, is all about awakening to the truth that we are not merely shaped by the world. We are participants in it. We're not just reflecting others. We're beginning to choose, to walk, to create. It's a tender, fragile phase of becoming. We stumble, we question, we doubt, but slowly the pieces fall into place. Santiago's journey captures that arc with luminous clarity. He starts as a dreamer, young, full of desire, but uncertain of the road. He ends not as a hero with answers, but as a man who understands that questions are where truth begins. That's the real alchemy. The desert teaches this. The silence, the wind, the waiting. At first, Santiago resists these moments. But over time, he learns to lean in. He listens to the world like a poet, and the world responds, not with certainty, but with mystery, with signs, with synchronicity. That's one of the most radical ideas in the book, that the universe speaks, not in words, but in omens, and that we, all of us, are meant to become fluent in its language. This isn't magical thinking. It's a deeper literacy, a way of reading the world not just with the mind, but with the heart, with the spirit. You might call it intuition, or faith, or simply listening. But whatever name we give it, the truth remains. We're all born with this capacity. It just gets buried beneath noise, expectation, fear. Santiago's journey is a reminder that we can dig it up, brush off the dust, and listen again. Now let's look at how Qualo frames learning in this tale. Knowledge here doesn't come from books alone. In fact, it often doesn't. The Englishman, remember, is buried in texts but lost in life. Santiago, by contrast, learns by moving, by watching, by failing. Learning through doing is the soul of the story. It's messy, humbling, real. It's also deeply empowering because it reminds us that we don't have to wait to be ready. We don't need perfect conditions or full certainty. We just need to begin. The path teaches. This aligns perfectly with Level 2's ethos. You are responsible for your becoming. You can't control everything, but you can choose to show up. That's the spark of real agency, and it changes everything. Let's talk briefly about the concept of treasure. Not the shiny gold, but the metaphor. In The Alchemist, the treasure shifts shape. At first, it's literal. Then it becomes about love. Then about wisdom. Then it loops back to the beginning. This circularity is crucial because it shows us that the treasure was never the object. It was always the transformation. The treasure is you, remade. That idea is ancient. From Zen Buddhism to Sufism, from Christian mystics to indigenous wisdom traditions, all echo this. What you seek is within you. Santiago had to leave home to see it, but in the end, it was always beneath his feet. This is Coelho's gentle paradox. The outward journey leads inward. The final step is the first. We travel far to discover what was always ours. So now, let's linger with the alchemist himself one last time. He's a mysterious figure, powerful, wise, but also silent when silence is needed. He doesn't hand Santiago answers. He offers tools, space, the occasional push. He's a guide, not a savior. This is a profound model of mentorship. True teachers don't shape us. They invite us to shape ourselves. He also embodies the idea of spiritual mastery, not through control, but through surrender. The alchemist doesn't force transformation. He allows it, trusts it. He's attuned to the soul of the world, a concept Qualo returns to again and again. What is the soul of the world? It's the thread that binds all life, a divine intelligence that we're a part of but often forget. It pulses through wind and stone, through heartbeats and starlight. And when we're in tune with it, when we act from love, from truth, we tap into a power beyond ourselves. This isn't religion. It's resonance. It's what mystics have always known. We are not separate. We are woven. This vision of interconnectedness is deeply healing. In a world so often fractured, competitive, isolating, Qualo offers unity, simplicity, harmony. And yet, the book never preaches. It whispers, like the wind in the dunes, like the alchemist's quiet smile, like Santiago's listening heart. Now, about Coelho's style, it's worth noting how accessible it is. This isn't dense literary fiction. The sentences are short, the language clear. There's repetition, rhythm, warmth. It's written like a story told by firelight. Intimate, timeless. That simplicity is part of its magic, because it disarms the mind, opens the heart, lets the ideas seep in without resistance. Some critics dismiss The Alchemist as naive, too earnest, too soft. But maybe softness is exactly what we need more of. Maybe the real radical act isn't cynicism, but wonder. Not irony, but hope. And that, in the end, is what this book gives us. Hope that life is not random, that our dreams matter, that we're not lost, we're on the path. Even if we don't know it yet, even if we doubt, even if we've forgotten where we started, somewhere beneath our feet, a treasure waits. So now, We've wandered with Santiago through the sands of the Sahara, and we've tasted the sweetness of arrival, only to discover that the real gold lies not in the chest, but in the change, in the becoming. But let's hold that thought and drift deeper into what makes The Alchemist such an enduring tale. Why does this book, simple in its form, yet profound in its reach, resonate with millions of readers across decades and cultures? It's because it speaks directly to a part of us that we often ignore, the yearning part, the part that dreams at night, that feels strangely moved by sunsets or poems or the scent of earth after rain. That part of us that believes there is more than comfort, more than routine, more than what the world says we should want. Paulo Coelho, in his own life, had to wrestle with this. He was expected to be a lawyer. His parents institutionalized him twice for refusing to follow convention. But he wrote anyway. He walked his path with fear, but also with fire. The Alchemist is his offering to everyone on the brink of a decision. Follow the safe road or the soul's road. This makes The Alchemist the quintessential level 2 book, stepping into the self. Because this stage of human development isn't about having all the answers. It's about waking up to the fact that you can ask questions, that you can seek, that you're separate from the collective dream, and perhaps that you can dream your own. Let's look closer at the mechanics of Santiago's growth. He begins as a shepherd, not just in profession, but in mindset. He's attached to a simple life, one that gives him security and occasional pleasures, but it also keeps him in a loop. Dream, wake, forget. The inciting moment is the recurring dream, a vision of treasure near the Egyptian pyramids. At first, he ignores it, dismisses it, but it persists. And isn't that always the way with our real callings? They whisper, then echo, then shake our rib cage until we either move or numb ourselves to silence. When Santiago decides to pursue the dream, it costs him his sheep, his home, his certainty. But with each loss, a deeper gain arises: adaptability, trust, presence. He learns to trade, to observe, to be still. These aren't dramatic transformations. They're quiet, earned. And then there's Fatima. Let's pause there, because love in The Alchemist is not an escape. It's a mirror. Fatima doesn't beg Santiago to stay. She urges him to go, to fulfill his personal legend, and promises to wait. This is radical. It redefines love not as possession, but as expansion, not as comfort, but as alignment. That's a message we rarely hear, and one worth repeating. Love, real love, wants the beloved to become, even if it means distance, even if it means longing, even if it means waiting in silence under the desert sky. Fatima is one of the book's quiet heroes, and through her, Coelho reminds us that every great journey is supported by those who believe, even when we falter. The Alchemist himself puts this another way. When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. That's one of the book's most quoted lines. And it's easy to reduce it to wishful thinking. But let's unpack it. The universe doesn't conspire instead of your effort. It conspires with it. Meaning, when you take a real step toward your dream, one that costs something one that transforms you. Forces unseen begin to shift. Doors open. Serendipities occur. Guides appear. Not because magic, but because movement. It's a dance. You move, and the world responds. But if you stand still, paralyzed by fear, waiting for certainty, then even the stars grow quiet. That's one of the book's harder truths. Fear is the real enemy. Not failure, not loss. Fear of loss, fear of failure. That's what stops us, again and again. And it's only by walking into the fear with open eyes and trembling limbs that we remember we're alive. Now, how about the language Koala uses? There's a simplicity here that's almost childlike. Parables within parables. Characters who speak truths without irony. It can feel too direct, too plain, until you realize that this is the only way to tell such a story. Strip it down. Say what you mean. Let the silence between the lines do the rest. This is a book you don't read for plot twists. You read it for the quiet voice that awakens in your chest. The memory it evokes of the moment you almost said yes. The path you nearly took. The dream you buried in the name of realism. Koala isn't writing to entertain. He's writing to remind. And that reminder is often inconvenient because it asks something of us. It asks us to stop pretending we don't know what we want, to admit that we're scared, and to move anyway. That's hard. That's brave. That's level 2. Because here, we stop being spectators. We become seekers. And Santiago, he is all of us, just one step ahead. So as we draw this reflection down, let's ask, what's your personal legend? It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to change the world. It just has to be true. Something that lights you up, that brings you home to yourself, that leaves you like Santiago, richer not in gold, but in knowing that you answered the call, that you listened, that you lived. We've watched Santiago walk the long path through the desert, guided by omens and shaped by stillness. But now, we stand on the threshold of transformation, the moment when the boy must become more than a dreamer. He must become the alchemist of his own soul. The real alchemist appears not merely as a figure in robes who understands metals. He's a symbol, a teacher, a mirror. He doesn't hand Santiago answers. Instead, he nudges him toward his own. This shift in guidance marks something critical in the developmental arc of both character and reader. At level 2, stepping into the self, we begin to see that mentors can't walk the path for us. They can only illuminate the next step. The rest is ours to choose, ours to risk, ours to survive. So when the alchemist meets Santiago, he doesn't coddle him. He tests him, challenges him, even places him in mortal danger. Why? Because spiritual growth isn't cushioned. It's catalyzed. And nothing forces us to find our inner truth like the threat of losing everything. At the heart of this section is the lesson that transformation is not decorative. It is elemental. Literal alchemy turns lead into gold. Yes. But spiritual alchemy turns fear into faith, doubt into decision, flesh into flame. Santiago must learn to trust his own soul, to read the language of the world, not with the mind, but with the heart. That's a recurring motif in the book. Listen to your heart. And while it might sound cliché, Qualo imbues it with complexity. Because the heart isn't always peaceful. It panics, it mourns, it questions. But underneath all that noise lies a stillness, a compass truer than logic. When Santiago finally understands this, he performs the impossible. He becomes the wind. Pause with that for a second. This is not fantasy. It's metaphor delivered as myth. Santiago doesn't conjure wind in the Harry Potter sense. He aligns with the universe, with the soul of the world. And in doing so, he dissolves the boundary between self and other. He understands that there is no separation. That's the secret at the center of the book and of all true spiritual traditions. You are not apart from the world. You are part of it, not a visitor, but a thread in its great tapestry. When you understand this, not just intellectually, but deeply, you can move mountains or become wind. This moment, rich in symbolism, also speaks to the age-old theme of surrender. Not surrender as weakness, surrender as trust, surrender as the recognition that some forces are greater than us, but not against us. And what happens next? Santiago doesn't receive glory. He doesn't become a king. He doesn't even get the treasure, yet. Instead, he gets clarity, and that's more valuable. Because at this point in his journey, Santiago is no longer searching for something outside of himself. He has become the very thing he was chasing. The personal legend wasn't a location. It was a transformation, a becoming. And that is the paradox at the heart of The Alchemist. You must go on the journey to realize you are the treasure all along. This calls to mind 1,000 spiritual traditions, ancient and modern. The pilgrimage that turns inward. Disinquan, the seeker who finds home where they began. And yet, even as Santiago approaches this enlightenment, Qualo brings us back to the world. There's still one last twist. The treasure isn't in the pyramids. It's back at the church where Santiago had his first dream. At first glance, this might feel cruel, a cosmic joke, but look closer. It's profound, because the return is essential. Joseph Campbell, in The Hero's Journey, describes the final stage as return with the elixir. You go, you transform, you come back, not to where you were, but as someone new. And the world itself, though unchanged, appears different, because you're different. This last movement of the novel, Santiago digging beneath the tree, reminds us of a great truth. The external treasure is meaningless without the internal transformation. Had Santiago found the gold earlier, he wouldn't have known what to do with it. He wouldn't have been the person worthy of it. But now, he's earned it. Not because of the gold, but because of the journey. Let's also talk about Coelho's structure. The Alchemist mirrors the great mythological arcs. The call, the threshold, the abyss, the return. But it does so with elegant economy. There's no excess here. Every character, every sentence serves a purpose. Even the minor figures, the crystal merchant, the Englishman, the camel driver, are archetypes. They represent choices, ways of being, warnings, lessons. The merchant shows what happens when fear wins. The Englishman, when knowledge replaces intuition. The camel driver, when simplicity becomes wisdom. Santiago learns from each, not by arguing, but by observing. And that's something we don't emphasize enough in modern culture. Learning through listening, through silence, through seeing how people live, not just what they say. Qualo gives us this gift throughout the novel, a story told in stillness, a reminder that truth is often quiet, that transformation doesn't require spectacle, only sincerity. So as Santiago unearths the literal treasure, what are we left with? Not gold, but grace. A story that says, yes, the world is harsh. Yes, you will be tested. Yes, you will lose. But if you listen, really listen to the voice within and walk your path with courage, the universe will respond. Not with ease, but with meaning. That's more than a bedtime story. That's a philosophy, a worldview. And it's why The Alchemist endures. Because it invites us to ask, not what the world expects, but what our soul desires. And then gently, bravely to go. The sun has set, and Santiago finally holds in his hands the literal treasure, the gold, the jewels, the shimmering reward that once existed only as a dream beneath a fig tree in a ruined church. But strangely, the moment feels quiet, not triumphant, not explosive, just still. And that's the genius of it, because The Alchemist was never about the treasure. It was always about the transformation required to find it. The boy who once herded sheep is now a man who understands the language of the world. And more than that, he knows his own heart. So what now? Let's transition from summarizing the story to reflecting on why it continues to touch so many people. Why it finds its way into suitcases and nightstands, dorm rooms and airports, libraries and self-help lists. Why does this small, poetic novel endure? To understand that, we must return to the book's core themes, those that resonate deeply with playlist level 2, stepping into the self. This level, if you remember, is about separating the self from the world, realizing that we have desires and dreams, and that achieving them isn't about wishful thinking. It's about doing, striving, aligning, adapting. Santiago's journey mirrors our own emergence from passive identity into active purpose. That moment when we stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing. And what does Qualo tell us about how to do this? First, listen to your heart, but not blindly. Throughout the novel, the heart isn't always right. It's afraid. It panics. It wavers. But by listening, truly listening, Santiago learns to understand it, to interpret it. This is a subtle but crucial point. Qualo doesn't promote impulsivity disguised as spirituality. He promotes awareness, the art of inner listening, of discerning true desire from distraction. Second, read the omens. In the world of The Alchemist, signs are everywhere. A butterfly, a desert hawk, a dream. But this isn't fantasy, it's metaphor. The omens are our intuition, the quiet nudges, the patterns we sense when we slow down. Santiago doesn't just trust fate. He participates in it. He acts, moves, risks, and that is what aligns him with the universe. This notion that the world conspires to help you when you follow your personal legend is perhaps the book's most famous promise, but it's often misunderstood. It doesn't mean the road will be easy or that the treasure is guaranteed. What it means is this: when you walk the path that's truly yours, life feels different. Synchronicities occur. Doors open, not magically, but meaningfully, because you're in flow. You're aligned. You're living truthfully. And that's what the personal legend is about. Not success in the modern sense, but meaning, integrity, wholeness. This is what makes The Alchemist so loved. It doesn't scream at you. It invites you to be quiet, to look within, to trust that your dream matters. Let's also acknowledge Coelho's literary style. Simple, poetic, gentle. Some critics dismiss it as too light, but they miss the point. The simplicity is the vehicle, not a limitation, like a parable or a fable. The language is spare because the wisdom is deep. The book speaks like a whisper to the soul, and that's rare. Now let's talk a bit about Paulo Coelho himself. Born in Brazil, rebellious, restless, a wanderer, he was institutionalized for refusing to follow the traditional path. He worked as a songwriter, a traveler, even flirted with the occult before finding his own personal legend as a writer. He wrote The Alchemist in 2 weeks. At first it sold slowly, but Coelho believed in it fervently. He even convinced his publisher not to let it die, and eventually it caught fire, not through marketing, through word of mouth, reader by reader, heart by heart. There's a reason The Alchemist has been translated into over 80 languages. It speaks a universal truth, one that transcends culture, age, religion, even skepticism. And that truth is this: you are allowed to dream, and you are capable of making that dream real. Not because you're entitled, but because you're responsible. That's a mature message. The Alchemist isn't for children. It's for souls on the cusp of awakening. People ready to step from safety into story, from numbness into knowing. So what about the treasure? Yes, Santiago finds it, but what he gains is far greater: perspective, presence, purpose. He could have stayed a shepherd, a safe, known life, but instead he risked everything, lost much, and found himself. That's why this book fits perfectly into level 2, stepping into the self, because it doesn't promise ease. It promises evolution through effort, through awareness, through the sacred act of showing up for your own life. So as you drift off tonight, maybe ask yourself, what is your personal legend? Not what your parents wanted, or what society expects. What calls to you? What dream keeps resurfacing, no matter how often you suppress it? Because, as Coelho writes, when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. But it starts with you, not waiting, not wishing, choosing, and then walking, one step at a time, even if the desert stretches endlessly, even if you're afraid, especially if you're afraid, because the real treasure isn't gold. It's who you become while searching for it. With the treasure unearthed and the journey complete, The Alchemist leaves us with more than a story. It leaves us with a spiritual blueprint. Santiago's Odyssey becomes a mirror for our own, and it's only fitting now to examine the deeper philosophical and symbolic elements that have drawn millions to this deceptively simple tale. Let's start by revisiting the personal legend, perhaps the most central and resonant concept of the entire book. What exactly is it? A personal legend, in Coelho's words, is what you have always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. The idea rings with childlike clarity. We are born with a calling, a seed of purpose. And yet, as we grow, the world begins to whisper, be practical, be safe, be small. Santiago's story reminds us that fulfilling our personal legend requires not only courage, but unlearning. Unlearning fear, unlearning conformity, unlearning the idea that security is the goal. This is the essence of level 2, stepping into the self. The shift from being molded by the world to sculpting oneself in response to a deeper call. We all know people like this. Maybe we've even lived like this. That's what makes the story hit home. Every step of Santiago's adventure offers a universal lesson. Let's look at a few. The desert as inner landscape. The long crossing through the desert is not just a physical trial. It's a spiritual one. Deserts symbolize silence, vastness, the stripping away of comfort. This is the space where identity is burned down to its bones, where the ego dies and something raw and real is revealed. The alchemist as inner teacher. Though he exists as a character, the alchemist represents something more profound. The wise self, the intuitive knowing, the calm guide that emerges only after confusion has been endured. He speaks little but sees much. He does not force transformation. He invites it. The language of the world. Throughout the book, we're told of this mystical language, spoken not with words, but with signs, symbols, intuition. This language is what Santiago learns to trust. And in trusting it, he aligns not just with fate, but with meaning. In a noisy world, Coelho is gently reminding us that there's a subtler voice underneath the noise, the one that always knows. And then there's the idea of fear. Fear is everywhere in the book. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of change. But fear, as Coelho shows us, is always the final barrier before breakthrough. The Englishman in the caravan wants to become an alchemist, but he reads and reads and never acts. Santiago, on the other hand, listens and leaps. And because of that, he grows. Here lies one of the most beautiful paradoxes of the novel. You find wisdom not by accumulating, but by letting go. This ties into another recurring theme, simplicity. Despite its philosophical undercurrent, The Alchemist is a remarkably simple story. The prose is clear, the structure elegant, the dialogue sparse. Coelho seems to be reminding us that truth does not need ornamentation. In fact, the more profound the truth, the quieter it tends to be. It's worth reflecting on why this simplicity works so well. In an age of overstimulation, the book offers stillness. In a culture that measures success by speed and productivity, The Alchemist slows us down and asks, what if your only job is to listen to your heart? This kind of storytelling creates space for the reader's own thoughts to echo back. Now let's look at the legacy of the novel. Since its publication in 1988, The Alchemist has sold more than 150 million copies. It has touched presidents, poets, entrepreneurs, spiritual seekers, and teenagers alike. But why? Because it doesn't preach. It invites. It doesn't provide answers. It awakens questions. The novel acts like a compass, not pointing to a specific destination, but reminding you that you have a direction, that your life is not random, that your longing matters, and that, perhaps more than anything, is what sets this book apart. It affirms that the yearning in your soul isn't a distraction from life. It is life. That following your personal legend isn't indulgent. It's sacred. That the universe, though vast and mysterious, is not indifferent. It responds. It reflects. It waits for your courage. This is why The Alchemist belongs to playlist level 2. Because it meets you in that liminal space between dreaming and doing. It doesn't demand perfection. It invites participation. As we begin to wrap up this exploration, think of how Santiago has changed, not just in circumstance, but in consciousness. He begins as a boy wanting adventure, and ends as a man who sees meaning in every grain of sand. That's the arc we're all meant to travel. And what makes it possible? Listening, trusting, acting, falling, rising, beginning again. So if you take nothing else from this story, take this: you don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. The path will unfold. The omens will appear. And your heart, though loud and messy and sometimes confusing, will never lie to you. Not if you truly listen. The desert wind quiets. Santiago's treasure is found, and the story reaches its soft, golden close. But before we slip fully into sleep, there's still one final moment of reflection to carry us gently into the hush of dreams. So let's settle in and slow everything down. The ending of The Alchemist is poetic in its circularity. Santiago's treasure, literally buried at the site where his dream first began, was at home all along. But he had to travel the world to recognize its value. That's not just literary symmetry. That's the entire human experience distilled. We often seek what we already have. We travel far, only to find ourselves. This final twist is more than clever. It's true. And in this truth lies the deepest magic of Coelho's novel. He's not telling us to abandon our lives for desert quests or camel caravans. He's reminding us that the real treasure is internal transformation, that the world outside us only mirrors the changes happening within. Santiago's gold could have been anything. What matters is who he becomes in the process of finding it. Now, in this final chapter, we take a broader view, zooming out to witness The Alchemist not as just a novel, but as a philosophical parable, a spiritual roadmap for the reader who's awakening to their own voice, their own dream. And what a beautiful map it is. The book reminds us of the alchemical truth, that we're always in the process of becoming. That suffering refines. That loss clears space. That love, when rooted in purpose, frees us rather than cages us. Santiago and Fatima's love is important here. She doesn't ask him to stay. She asks him to go. Not because she doesn't care, but because real love aligns with destiny, not against it. This kind of love is rare in fiction, and rarer still in life. But it's what makes their connection feel timeless. So, where does that leave us? We close the book not with the feeling of an ending, but with the quiet sense that something has begun. We've been reminded of some important things, that the signs are always there if we choose to see them, that the journey may be hard, but it's holy. That intuition is not foolishness, it's wisdom unspoken. And that our personal legends, our truest, deepest callings, don't need permission from anyone. They just need faith. Now let's take a final moment to reflect on what makes the Alchemist endure across generations. It's not just the plot, not just the language. It's the way it makes us feel. It feels like being seen, like someone wrote down the questions we were too shy to ask, like someone whispered, "Yes, you are allowed to want more." And this is why the Alchemist belongs right here. Level 2, stepping into the self. Because at this level, we're no longer passive. We're awakening. We're realizing that while the world can shape us, we are not its prisoner. We have choice. We have will. We have dreams that are not distractions. They are directions. The novel's writing style mirrors its message. It's spare, gentle, but loaded with meaning. It never shouts. It nudges. It lets silence do some of the work. There's something sacred about that. It's a literary philosophy that says, I trust the reader. That's rare and beautiful. Now, as we end this final section, I invite you to carry a few thoughts with you. Where is your treasure buried? What omens have you ignored? What dream have you shelved for someday? It's not too late. You don't need to cross the Sahara. You just need to begin, wherever you are, with what you have. Because every great journey starts not with a step, but with the belief that you were meant to take it. So go on. Be your own alchemist. Listen. Follow the signs. Trust the wind. And always, always remember, the treasure is never far from the heart that truly seeks. Now let's wind down. The desert fades to dusk. Warm air drifts past ancient stones. Somewhere a boy leans against a sycamore tree and smiles, because he's found what he was looking for, and somehow it was home all along. You, too, have traveled tonight, through golden sands, quiet oases, bustling markets, and silent nights lit only by stars. And perhaps, somewhere in the folds of this journey, you felt something stir inside you. A dream, a longing, a whisper. Whatever it was, hold it gently, let it echo, and know that you're not alone in seeking. The world is vast, but your path is real. Your journey matters. And just like Santiago, you're exactly where you need to be to begin again. So breathe deeply. Let your thoughts soften. Let your spirit rest. Because your treasure is waiting. And the whole universe, yes, the whole grand, mysterious universe, is quietly conspiring in your favor. Good night, dreamer. Sweet dreams.